Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Largay. I'm your Communication Council Chair. I'm also the host of the Way Forward podcast and third generation volunteer at the United Way of Greater Waterbury. So you can say that United Way has been in my blood since I was born. But even I sometimes have a little bit of difficulty explaining exactly what United Way is and what they do. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to dive into the educational impact area here and go through what exactly is United Way doing in our community. And I've got some special guests that I'm excited to have. So my first guest is Jason. So Jason, I guess my first question would be, what is your role and what do you do at United Way?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Jason Martinez, and I have the privilege of serving as Vice President of Community Impact at United Way Greater Waterbury.
So can you tell me a little bit about what exactly is the educational impact area and what United Way is doing?
Sure. So education is one of our three impact areas. The others are financial stability and basic needs. And although each of them works really with their own focus, they all kind of overlap, and that's done purposefully. The goal is to ensure that we're able to have this holistic approach to how we impact the greater Waterbury community. For education, there's kind of two strands, if you will. There's our early care work, and then there's our positive youth development work. The early care are kind of what I like to think of like the little ones, our little babies. It's birth to 5 years old. And that work is really all about what do kids need before they ever enter the four walls of a school, right? Those early literacy components, the developmental pieces, everything to make sure they can be as successful as possible before they get into the schools. Our positive youth development is kind of the other side of that coin. It's for the students once they're in the schools, right? So our elementary, our middle school, even our high school kids. It's what do those kids need in order to be successful, not only in the schools, but outside of the schools as well. So it's making sure they have opportunities to lots of different activities. Many times it's that traditional after-school model, but it really is so much more than that. What I'm really proud of is both of those two kind of components of our education work. We're able to make sure that our partnerships align with how we want to invest in the community. And the goal is really to ensure that all kids can reach their full potential and be successful.
So you mentioned partnerships. Obviously United Way can't do it all on their own. So can you talk a little bit about how impactful it is to have these strategic partnerships to further down the road for United Way?
Yeah, for sure. I think the partnerships, as you mentioned, are so very important. I think in order for us to do our work, we can't do it alone. It's got to be, a collective piece with lots of different folks in the community. And so I think when I think of partnership, I'm thinking of our traditional funded program partners. I'm thinking of our initiative partners. I'm thinking of our general community partners. And I've got lots of examples I could talk about. I think with our funded program partners, the YMCAs, both in Greater Waterbury and the Cheshire YMCA, we're able to support them for their school-age youth programs, so traditional after school again, as well as the childcare programs, which childcare is just so important, right? And when I mentioned the overlap piece, here's where it comes in. Our financial stability work is all about making sure folks can go and work and earn livable wages to take care of their families. But where do you leave your children if you're going to go off and work? So we've got to ensure that there's affordable, really adequate childcare programs available for our families. So talking about kind of the early care work and the child care work, it's really important to note that according to our 2020 ALICE report, and ALICE is an acronym that United Ways have put together that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It's really kind of those who are working 2-3 jobs even and still struggling to have their basic needs met. Well, all the 15 United Ways in Connecticut put out this report in 2020, and one of the things that came out of that was 44% of Connecticut families are living in a childcare desert. So they don't have access to affordable, high-quality childcare. So for us to provide that support to agencies that do that is so very important at this time. I think another program that I'd love to mention is focusing on our early care, which is Reach Out and Read. And so when you're thinking about making sure that families have the ability to have their kids successful from the start of things, we're thinking of kind of the work that Reach Out and Read does. And through our support over the last 4 years, they've expanded to 12 sites in 5 of the towns within our catchment area. And they provide those early literacy tools for children and families. In fact, it happens right at pediatric well visits. So, anyone who has kids know when they're young, you're bringing them to the pediatrician all the time. And so imagine going to your pediatrician and also being able to learn as a parent, how to support your kid and understanding that you're their first teacher. And I was a public school teacher for 6 years, so I know how important it is to have kids coming into my classroom with those, foundational skills already in place. And so during these childcare visits, the parents are taught, skills that they could be doing even when their kids are a couple months old, just reading to them and helping them understand, how you turn through the pages of a book are so crucial. In addition, the families leave with a hard copy book that they can take and add to their own, at-home library. So that's really awesome. But of course, we do work around, some of the older kids too. So I think a good example is Waterbury Youth Services. So we support their Linking Academics to Life program, and that's for the high schoolers, right? So we've got from the little babies all the way to our high school kids. And this program is thinking more about what do high schoolers need as they're getting ready to enter into the world? What are some of those non-academic activities and pieces so that the high schoolers can grow and develop and again reach their full potential. So we're so excited with that partnership. In fact, our most recent annual report is live today. So I hope that folks go ahead and take a read because there's a really cool story about Largay Martinez, no relation to me, who's been part of the Linking Academics to Life program for many years and his perspective on how amazing it's been.
Well, that's absolutely incredible, talking about the partnerships and all of these amazing programs, but the only way it all works is with what? Volunteers, right? It's the only way that the United Way can really have these impactful programs and actually have them make an impact. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of volunteers and how they play a role into United Way's education impact area?
For sure. I mean, the volunteers are everything, and we're so fortunate to have some of the most dedicated volunteers I've ever worked with. Each impact area has a group of volunteers that, along with United Way staff, really review, the strategies, make sure they're aligned with what the needs in the community really are. They're looking at, how do we most effectively and efficiently utilize the dollars that are raised from the community to ensure that the impact is as strong as it possibly can be. They're the ones who are looking at the outcomes and making sure we're achieving those outcomes and doing all that evaluation piece, and so I'm fortunate to have Liz Brown, who is the chair of our Education Impact Council. She's been on our team for quite some time and she's so dedicated. We're so thankful to her, without a doubt.
It's funny. I said sometimes it's hard for me to explain exactly what United Way does. I think I'm just going to bring you every single time, especially for this education impact area. But honestly, this has been a great overview of this very, very important thing that we all know is important for our community, and that's education, right? So thank you, Jason, so much for joining me. And we're going to keep diving deeper, and we're actually going to go into a special guest from Bridge to Success. So stay tuned. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue our conversations on the education impact area, and I'm joined now by a very lovely guest. I have Althea Brooks, who's the Executive Director of Waterbury's Bridge to Success. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Scott. Glad to be
So
here.
can you tell me, for starters, what is Bridge to Success?
Bridge to Success is a cross-sector partnership of 90 or more organizations, educators, leaders, youth, parents, caregivers, interested parties, funders, who come together using a collective impact approach to really making change by centering racial equity for children and youth in the city of Waterbury so that they can be successful in school, career, and life.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So can you tell me a little bit about the strategic partnership with United Way and how that helps Bridge to Success?
Definitely. Bridge to Success now is 11 years old, but it came into fruition as a result of the Youth Policy Prevention Council. And individuals had come together after folks were saying, I'm seeing you in 6 different meetings, we need to come together. And United Way leaned into that space and became the convener of organizations to come together to really begin to take a collective approach to making change for youth in the city of Waterbury. And the result was really beginning to look at this work from cradle to career, 0 to 24, and the impact on youth. And United Way was the organization who brought folks to the table.
It makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned cradle to career. I hear there's a 6-phased process. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Definitely. The work is guided by our national partner, Strive Together, but the 6-phase process is really, as I said, looking at children from 0 to 24. So the 6 phases are kindergarten readiness. The second phase is third grade reading. We know literacy is huge, a big piece of the work United Way does. The third phase is middle math. We know math is a critical factor, right, in any future success of a youth. Then we look at high school graduation, which we know really begins to determine the economic viability of the future of a youth. But then we also look at post-secondary enrollment and post-secondary completion. And that work then shows up in our collaborative action networks. And so that, in the case of the kindergarten readiness, the third grade reading, that happens in our early care and education collaborative action network. And then when we look at middle math, high school enrollment or high school graduation, that happens in our positive youth development collaborative action network. And then post-secondary enrollment and completion happens in our college and career pathways collaborative action network. But it's all undergirded by really our organizing and advocacy collaborative action groups, and that's our Parents of Waterbury and our Let Youth Lead Youth Advisory think tank.
Well, that makes it all come together.
Yes.
I understand, yes.
Yes.
So there's one more thing that I'm curious about, and it's just like your personality. I hear about this Sparkler app. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. As I mentioned about our collaborative action networks, and I want to mention United Way has been a big partner in the expansion of the Sparkler app in the city. Actually, I have to say, when the opportunity came forth, it was United Way who came to BTS and said, hey, you guys are doing a lot in the early care and education space. This might be a great opportunity to really bring tools to the community that really can engage parents and providers to really help ensure our kids are kindergarten ready. And that's how Sparkler came about. We actually were the second round of cities, so one of 4 cities who had the opportunity to roll out this really unique approach to really surveilling the development of children 0 to 5 using this mobile app called Sparkler that embeds the ages and stages questionnaire that looks at 5 key domains around children's development. And so in our early care and education where United Way shows up as a part of it in our home visitors network, which was one of the larger networks where the Office of Early Childhood, who funds the Sparkler app, gave the priority to really utilize that app. And during this pandemic and last year, it was extremely critical for organizations to stay in touch with families. And they used the Sparkler as a way of helping them really assess what was going on with children at that time.
Well, it's the times, right? We're all on apps. That's how we're communicating, and you guys are obviously doing a great job of that. You know, I've learned a lot here myself about what Bridge to Success is up to, and I think everybody else has learned a lot about how you guys are really helping the community and the educational impact area. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, you guys stay tuned though, we're not done yet. Okay, so we're going to continue our conversation about United Way education work with the United Way board member and superintendent of Waterbury's public schools, Dr. Verna Ruffin. Welcome.
Thank you.
So first question that I have for you, Dr. Ruffin, is what attracted you to becoming a part of the board for the United Way and getting involved with the organization?
Well, I consider myself deeply honored by being asked to serve on the United Way board here in Waterbury, Connecticut. I previously served on the United Way board in other states before I came here. So to be a part of such an awesome organization that embraces an entire community and for the services that it does for the surrounding communities, the entire greater Waterbury area and our schools, it's exciting to me, but what an awesome opportunity to really give back.
So I heard a stat that there's 19,000 students in Waterbury with all different types of individual and collective needs. Can you tell me a little bit about how United Way is helping, impact the needs of the greater Waterbury?
Certainly. Our current enrollment is 18,500 plus students in Waterbury. I believe that to be successful, that an entire community must care about the students and the families that our students are coming from. And so United Way provides a lot of services, not only to our children directly, but also to the families which affect our students here in Waterbury.
So I know we had a conversation a little bit before this that I mentioned that I'm third generation of my family being involved in the United Way. So I've literally been involved in the organization since I was born. But one of the really cool things that didn't exist but now exists is the Upstarters program for the youth. Can you tell me a little bit about this program?
I'm so excited about Upstarters. I think our students need to learn how to give back to the community and not only be recipients, but to learn how to give back to the community. Upstarters is an opportunity for our students to belong, to be able to volunteer, to be of service, to give back to the community that is giving back to them, and to also know that they are a resource to others. Upstarters allows our very young students to become engaged in their community and to give back, and that's one of the most exciting things about it.
Well, it's exciting to me because, like I said, I've been involved in volunteerism my entire life. And it's been a big part of growing up for me and now my professional life too. So to get started early with an Upstarters program, it's such a great thing to be getting into the community. So speaking of Upstarters and the United Way and all of these great programs, are you seeing an impact from this within the youth?
Yes, definitely. I see it in our students being actively involved. I see it in the students and the families who receive benefits from United Way. I see it from the adults that are getting services from United Way, and certainly an awareness for our students and for the greater community about what United Way really is and how it is such an important organization to give back to the community.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to end this. It's about showing people what the United Way is, right? And the only way that you really understand it is either getting involved or telling stories like this about how it is actually impacting our community. So I have to thank you so much for joining us. It has been my pleasure having you here.
And our other guests. And thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys learned something. I know I did. And let's all just continue to build the bridge to a better community.